Play.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I have no idea what time it is where you are or where you're tuning in from. I have no idea really what day it is, even what year it is. Sometimes I am confused. But whatever you do, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. I can see some comments already from Brian as well and Ghosty. I will be addressing some of your comments. Probably best to do it at the end, okay? So that way you can also react to some of the things that I'm saying. But really good to have so many of you on board already. Okay, as you can see from our headline here, these were, for me, the three major casualties of today. Daniil Medvedev, last year's Australian Open finalist and recent world number one, out in straight sets to Sebi Korda. I called it. I said it yesterday. I said it last week. Nothing surprised me about that result. I'll go into a bit more detail very shortly. Maria Sakkari also out. Pretty sad. A very nervy Maria Sakkari. We saw some double faults from her in that final set. But again, I'll come to that in a bit more detail. Cam Norrie, I think, is a bit more surprising, but he did come up against a tough opponent. Okay, let's go through some of the day's play. So, where shall we begin? Well, I guess we can begin with, let's begin with Sebi Korda. Okay, it happened in the evening. We had three unbelievable matches reaching a crescendo in a way. This one was reaching the end of the first set, but I do think it was decisive. And I think that that was pretty important to see how the rest of the match turned out. And this one was coming towards the end of its first set as Tiafoe and Khachanov were coming towards the end of their match. And we also had Khachanov and Shapovalov. How many ovs is that? Is that a novs for you? Anyway, they were all coming to the end of their match as well. And it was reaching quite a crescendo in each respective match. Looking at this match and looking at Sebi Korda, has he dispelled some of the concerns about his nerve? We saw him how he cracked a little bit in Indian Wells with a two-break advantage over Rafael Nadal. Maybe there've been a few doubts about his temperament, or at least we were uncertain. Did he dispel some of those today? I think maybe he did, because listen, think about some of the travails that he went through today. Upper break. He loses it in the first set. Goes into the tiebreak, has a mini tiebreak advantage, loses it once more. However, his aggressive style of tennis never failed, and he continued and he won that tiebreak. He then goes on to win the second set. In the third set, he's a break up. He cedes that advantage, and you're thinking, oh no. But he didn't let it bother him, and he managed to close it out, beating Daniil Medvedev. What a 12 months it has been for Daniil Medvedev. Think back to that Australian Open final. He goes into it as, for me, a pretty warm favourite against Rafael Nadal. And what we saw in the first 2.5 sets reflected that. Then came the inflection point at love 40 to his advantage. Nadal comes back, and he hasn't been the same player since. He goes to Acapulco. Nadal crushes him. He goes into the Sunshine Double and doesn't perform, perhaps due to an injury. Clay court season, pretty much a write-off because of that injury. Does okay on the grass, doesn't play at Wimbledon. Not his fault. However, then we enter the key stage of the season for him, and he disappoints immensely in North America ahead of the US Open. Question marks are now being asked. It's been 6, 7, 8 months since we've really seen him perform. We know he won in Las Cabos, but we didn't take too much stock in that. US Open disappoints once again, out in the 4th round. It's getting earlier and earlier and earlier, his departures, and now it's the 3rd round, and he drops out of the world top 10. I had concerns. I also thought it was a little bit strange, given the 12 months that we had, that some people were predicting Daniil Medvedev, or in fact, many people were predicting Daniil Medvedev to get to the semi-finals. Many people had him getting to the final, and some people even saying he would go all the way. There has been nothing that we have seen in the last 12 months, in my opinion, that suggested that would be the case. Third round departure, and the most damning indictment of all, it's not a surprise. But it's not a surprise because of the person on the other side of the net. And I have to say, I took a lot of stock in his performances before here, particularly, of course, in Adelaide, where he got to the final and was within 1 point of beating Novak Djokovic. For me, that said a lot, and he performed today. How far do you think he can go? I have him in my semi-final. I had a few doubts about it, last-minute doubts before today's match, thinking maybe that semi-final was a bit optimistic. Anyway, now, of course, looking pretty good. Okay, next match on the horizon for us to discuss. Let's have a quick look through some of these. Krejcikova, Coco Gauff, and Jessica Pegula, and Iga Swiatek as well, all comfortably through. Which one of those three do you have going all the way? I have Krejcikova in the final, but to be honest with you, it's a bit of a lottery. Any one of those three, maybe even Pegula right now, is looking the best bet to go all the way, particularly, of course, as she beat Iga 6-2, 6-2 just a few weeks before this tournament. Lewis, nice of you to join us as well. I will be addressing all of your comments, so do not be afraid. Do not think that I'm ignoring you. I can see certainly the names, and I will be addressing some of the questions very shortly. Rybakina, good win for her. I know we had Ghosty on board for that match at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, as it was here in Germany. I'm sure it was a much more comfortable time in North America, where many of you tuned in from. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, by the way. We're actually going to have a night off this evening. We're going to have a couple of beers. I hope you don't mind, Ghosty. I hope you don't mind, Brian. We're going to have a couple of beers this evening and relax, but we'll be waking up for you in the morning and bringing you live coverage of Andy Murray, Roberto Bautista Agut. How can we not? And also Novak Djokovic, who will also be in action against Dimitrov. Also, let me know how you see those matches panning out. We'll be covering those two matches and basically all of the evening or night action in Melbourne, which of course is morning here. And I apologize, that will be about 3 o'clock in the morning, which is probably when Ghosty and Brian are coming back from their beer-swilled pub nightclub nights out. So maybe you can tune in and fall asleep to the dulcet tones of talking tennis. Rybakina, good win. Not the most exciting of matches, as I said before, I would suggest, which basically was largely down to the fact that she served well. Collins didn't return so well. What does that mean? As I said to Ghosty in the live chat, maybe not the most exciting of events. Collins, I think the injury was okay, but she did go off court. There was a couple of hobbles from her, maybe impeded her, but not taking anything away from Rybakina, who I think was excellent on serve, aided and abetted tinily by Collins. And don't forget, this is the third match in a row for Collins going 3 sets. Bit of a disappointment for her. Last year's finalist. That's both of last year's runners-up, by the way, of course, out on day 5. Daniel Collins crashes out the number 13 seeds. Rybakina goes on. And of course, Rybakina now will be playing Iga Swiatek. Now things start to get very, very, very interesting for the world number 1. And to be honest with you, I make Iga the slight favorite. But there'll be no surprises from now on regarding the women's draw, in my opinion. Okay. What have we got up next? Oh, little picture of Andy Murray. Yes, he arrived at Melbourne Park today at around about lunchtime. Just a few hours after he'd left to warm up and exercise a bit on the bike and have a bit of a practice. Okay, Jannik Sinner is the next one on my list. He won in 5 sets. Do you see that as a remarkable turnaround? I know that Brian said, oh, Jannik Sinner's done. I think by the time Brian woke up this morning, or maybe even before he went to bed, he may well have realized that actually Yannick started to turn things around. And to be honest with you, though, he did get a little bit of a helping hand from Marton Fucsovics, in my opinion, summed up by one particular volley at the net, which was pretty tame. But you don't win 3 games out of the last 21 if there isn't something going wrong on the other side of the net. What exactly that was, don't know. He's not exactly mentally fragile, and he certainly isn't physical. I do think Sinner upped his game. The unforced errors went down. The winners picked up. But there's no doubt in my mind that he was aided and abetted by his opponent. 4-6, 4-6, 2 tight first sets. And perhaps the scoreboard was telling us a bit of a lie at that point. I remember looking at the overall points tally, and it was pretty much 50-50 at the beginning of the third set. And then Sinner stepped it up and ended up rounding it off pretty clearly. Gary, nice of you to come on board as well. I will be addressing that Zhu Lin match very shortly. Sinner is winning the Australian Open, Jethro. I apologize. That one was very succinct, Jethro. I have actually vowed to come to your comments at the end. I hope you can hear me clearly. Ghosty, you're my sound man in North America. Let me know if I'm coming through loud and clear there. But like I said, I'll be coming to all your comments. I promise you, I'll address them all. But you see, if I lean over, it's too much to then lean back again. So what I'll do is I'll come to your comments at the end, and I'll try and address as many of them as I can. But I had to say, I saw Sinner winning the Australian Open jump out at me there. Well, there is going to be someone standing in his way, and that man, of course, is somebody I don't have a picture of. Probably because he had a pretty unremarkable match, which was, of course, Stefanos Tsitsipas. That's who Sinner will be playing in the next round, and that's where I see Sinner's Australian Open run coming to an end. Tsitsipas winning in straight sets today. He's looking good. Looking very good. And of course, with Medvedev going out, arguably would say his path is a bit clearer. Of course, Rafa Nadal going out already as well. Rafa Nadal's conqueror as well. Bit of a pity for McDonald, of course, to crash out today in straight sets to Nishioka. Nishioka, of course, will be playing the man on my screen right now, Khachanov, in the next round, because he saw off Tiafoe. But just quickly on Nishioka against McDonald. McDonald had an abdomen problem that appeared to hamper him from the beginning of the second set. Don't know to what extent. Nevertheless, Nishioka is through, and he will play Karen Khachanov. There he is. By the way, how professional do you think my scoring thing is here? We're just scribbling the scores on the screen. By the way, I didn't hear a response from Ghosty regarding my sound. Let me just have a quick look to see if you can hear me loud and clear. Loud and clear. Great. Thank you, Ghosty. I'll just put that up on the screen for now. That'll do. And it sits quite nicely across my chest. Talking of chests, is it Fucsovics-esque? Not quite. Bit more working out to do, but I'm sure yours is Ghosty. Listen, I know you can't quite see it, but basically we've got 6-3, 6-4, 3-6. There's a 6 here somewhere, which basically represents 7-6 in the fourth set for Khachanov. But listen, that barely tells the story. Khachanov, as is his wont, ekes out the first 2 sets. Better player for sure, but from the third set onwards, we did start to get a feel that Tiafoe was flexing his muscles. And in fact, he was phenomenal in that third set. And I would argue he was possibly even the better player in the fourth set. And he was certainly the better player for the first 7 points of the tiebreak. He races into a 6-1 lead, which makes it all the more excruciating that, of course, he ends up losing the match. 6-1 soon becomes 6-2, 6-3, 6-4. And here comes the crucial point for me. And I think psychologically, this is what happens. We saw it today with, funny enough, with the Daniil Medvedev tiebreak with Korda. And I said it again, and I said it for the Tiafoe one. The crucial point for me in this situation, when you have an advantage, but you cede it, We saw it with Nadal against Zverev and Nadal also against Djokovic in the quarterfinals and semifinals of the French Open. Who remembers what happened there? Nadal gets into, I think, a 6-1 lead against Djokovic. Djokovic races back to 6-4. This is the most important point. It's the last one you're going to have for the set or potentially sometimes for the match on your serve. And you've already seen your opponent start to eke back, but you've still got a gap. You need to do it here. Nadal did it at 6-4 in that tiebreak against Djokovic. Zverev didn't do it in the tiebreak against Nadal. Sinner did it today at 6-4, 7-4. But can you imagine having had that advantage, especially as he had a serve advantage as well in that set? Imagine losing it. And that's what happened to Tiafoe. That is the most important point of the entire match. From that point onwards, it goes from 6-4 to 6-5. There was no doubt in my mind that Tiafoe, and I'm going to use this verb advisedly, was going to lose that tiebreak. No matter what happened in the next few points, it eked and it ebbed and it flowed. But there was now no point at which Tiafoe was in control once more. And Khachanov won it in that tiebreak. Crushing for Tiafoe. Crushing was what he was doing for the previous two sets, by the way, in my opinion. And really disappointing for him in the clash of last year's US Open semi-finalists. Khachanov, though, rides on to the fourth round where he will play Nishioka. Let me know in the live chat how you see that match going, because one of those two people will be a US Open. US Open? Oh, maybe. But in this year's Australian Open quarter finalist. Okay. What have we got next on the agenda? Ubi Urkac winning in 5 sets today. Again, we can see the professional writing on the screen. Let me know in the live chat what you think about all this. And don't forget to like this. And if you're watching retrospectively, you may be watching in a few hours from now, long after we finish recording this video and long after I've had a couple of beers in the pub, and Ghosty and Brian too. You may be watching retrospectively. Get your comments in the live comments. In the live comments? No. In the comments below the video as well. And I will try and read them and address them as and when I can. Listen, and if you're watching it also tomorrow, you can still get in the comments. If you're watching it perhaps in 36 hours from now as well, still get in the comments below the video. And you can keep doing so. One thing I would say is if you're watching this video in 10 years from now, in the year 2023 plus 10. If you're watching this in 10 years from now, what are you doing watching a review of day 5 at the Australian Open in 10 years? I have no idea. But you're still welcome to get in the comments below. And if I'm able to and capable of doing so, I will try and respond. Okay. Back to Hubie Hurkacz anyway. Back to the present. Okay. So, Hubie Hurkacz, 7-6, 6-4, 1-6, 4-6, 6-3. He won today. What is there to say about this? We had Jamie on the live stream. He was covering it. I had basically 3 screens on at the same time. I was largely over the Tiafoe Khachanov match, but then I would switch as well to this match. And both matches, one was in its final game and the other one was in its tiebreak, were at the same point, as was the Sinner match, by the way, in its, Sinner. Korda match was in its tiebreak as well. It was insane. I was trying to catch all points. And sometimes it was working. You had Khachanov bouncing the ball while Shapovalov was crushing a backhand, for example, whilst there was a small break in the what match am I missing from that? In the you've got it anyway. One match? I can't remember now. Tiafoe was playing against. See, most people would just abandon at this point and they go, "Oh, it doesn't matter." I'm going to try and remember, however excruciating this becomes. So Tiafoe was playing Khachanov, right? And they were in a 4-set tiebreak, 6-1, So Tiafoe was there crushing the ball at various points. Then we had these guys, Hurkacz and Shapovalov, and we had Korda, thank you, against Medvedev in their tiebreak. And there was ebbs and flows in each one. And at times, I could watch one point after the other with the exact gaps going on. Okay. So, back to this match, though, specifically. I don't think it's a bad defeat for Chapeau. That's 3 Grand Slams now out of the last 5, I think. He's been involved in 5-set defeats, but they have been of a very different nature. The one a year ago against Nadal, the noise I made says it all. However, the defeats to Rublev and then today to Hurkacz, a little bit different. What will disappoint Shapovalov most of all is probably the first set. The first set, he has advantages, including a breakup. That's really, in a way, probably where he lost it. He had the advantage at 5-4. I think he was serving for it. Certainly, I remember Hurkacz getting it back to 5-all. He had chances in that first set. He didn't take them, and ultimately, he was made to pay. But this fight back, by the way, 1-6, 4-6, was excellent. He almost got it back as well here. Hurkacz was serving for it. Love 40 on the Hurkacz serve. But hats off to Hurkacz. He pulled it round. He wins 6-3, progresses through to round 4. Okay. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat. Azarenka, by the way, I didn't see this match, but it was a good one, and I know Nick was covering it for us on the channel today. 1-6, 6-2, 6-1. By the way, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we have more tennis coming for you. We're just going to be across this Australian Open like nothing else before. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are new. Okay, 1-6, 6-2, 6-1 kind of tells it all. There was a big swing in this match, and Azarenka proceeds through to the next round. This was a match that I only caught the final set of, so I didn't see the first 2 sets. Well, I saw a few points from the first 2 sets. But 7-6, 1-6, 6-4. You can't quite see the 6-4 there. If perhaps, by the way, I do this by the wonder of modern technology. Maybe you can see it. Yes, you can. So 7-6, 1-6, 6-4. Third set, I was all across. First couple of sets, I was catching points here and there as I was also trying to keep across the Korda match against Medvedev. Maria Sakkari is half of this story. Zhu is the other half. Zhu played really, really well. And the problem is for Sakkari is I think now the nerve situation means that she does need her opponent to maybe not quite be making her play the extra ball, not quite be hitting top form. When Sakkari sees on the other side of the net, Sakkari's feeling a bit nervous. What helps is if your opponent is a little bit nervous too. Your opponent is failing slightly too. This can help your case. Not today, though. She's seeing her opponent crush the ball, not making too many errors. Even though she was a breakup in the third set, then she lost that break. Sakkari gets it back. By the way, there was a little mean moment I found. Really mean. Really mean. And if there's a steward anywhere nearby, they're not doing their job if they don't eject this individual from the crowd. Sakkari faults. Happens. She's bouncing the ball, ready to do a second serve. Somebody shouts out audibly, extremely clearly, almost as clearly as Ghosty can hear me in North America right now. And I hear him say, after that fault from Sakkari, another one. I felt really, really bad for Maria. And I'm so pleased that she got the ball in. I think she ended up winning that point. But you could sense for Maria again, the nerve management got to her. You know, in an opposite way, she shouldn't be losing to the world number 87. She should be winning that match, particularly as, to be honest with you, when she wins that second set, 6-1, I'm thinking to myself, she's going through, but she's not winning the tournament. That's what I was thinking at that point. I was surprised, and hats off to Zhu at the beginning of the third set. She gets it back together, races into a very early 2-love lead with a break. Sakkari gets it back, and I think, okay. But that was more Sakkari getting it back. It wasn't Zhu failing. Now, what's your response to this, Zhu? Zhu maintained, maybe even up to level. That only unnerved Sakkari even more. I remember at least one double fault at a crucial point as well. Once Sakkari lost her serve, I still thought it's not necessarily done. There'd been quite a few breaks already. However, Zhu served it out incredibly, and what an emotional time it was for her in the encore interview afterwards. She said, "Do you mind if I speak Chinese?" And she spoke a bit of Chinese, but we all understood the message, certainly beforehand, as she said just how incredible this was for her. She progresses onto the fourth round. Someone who's not progressing, though, Cam Norrie. His form going into the tournament was unbelievable. Maybe he peaked. Maybe he peaked before this tournament. And that, unfortunately, wasn't good enough today against Lehetska, the inform Lehetska, by the way, who's been playing really well. Remember him crushing Zverev before the United Cup. Before the United Cup? In the United Cup, before the Australian Open. But mind you, everyone's been crushing Zverev, including Mo, of course, yesterday. So Cam Norrie, 7-6, wins the first set. Thinks he set. 3-6, 6-3, 1-6, 4-6. Doesn't completely tell the story, though. 5 sets. There were so many breaks of serve. It felt like about an hour and a half before Cam Norrie could hold his serve around about sets 4 and 5. He just kept getting broken. In fact, the one in that 1-6-4 set was Cam Norrie breaking Lehetska, and he had break points. And perhaps that was the story. Lehetska took his chances. Cam Norrie didn't. There was a small issue with his knee, I think, in the 5th set. But in fairness, it didn't seem to disrupt his movement, certainly not on the day. And Lehetska proceeds through to the 4th round of the Australian Open. Okay. I think that's me done. Well, it's just a few things I just want to have a quick look at. Yeah, just some of the quarterfinal, sorry, some of the 4th round lineups now that we do have on the cards as a result of things. Maybe let's, yeah, can't quite see those on the big screen, but nevertheless, I can tell you what they are. So we've got McDonald against Nishioka. Sorry, we've got Nishioka against Khachanov, and we've got Hurkacz against Korda. So 2 of those will be in the quarterfinals. I'm going to stick with Korda, of course, and I guess Khachanov in his 2nd consecutive Grand Slam quarterfinal. And now Korda, semifinals. That's where I had him, looking more and more likely. Okay, and in the other section, the other quarter, if you like, Tsitsipas will play Sinner in a replication, repeat. I think it's the same thing, right? Of last year's quarterfinal. And again, I see it going the same way. Tsitsipas beating Sinner. I had that in my bracket. That's how it is. Felix is playing Lehechka. Felix, I think, will progress there. And that'll make a tasty quarterfinal. Felix against Tsitsipas. But you know what? I wouldn't rule out Lehechka. I really wouldn't. Felix has been anything but a certainty. He won in 4 sets, by the way, against Cerundolo, but it wasn't comfortable. He had a bit of a wobble. He seems to always have a wobble. He wobbles more than a bit of jelly, in all honesty. You know what I mean. So that is that. I'm now going to come to the live chat to see what's going on here. Maybe we can even just switch this around a little bit so I can see things a bit more clearly. Khachanov is always just hanging around the top, the step up to a trophy feels so close, and yet Ghosty so far. Okay, I'm going to scroll back to some of your earlier comments to see what's going on there, and try and address some of your questions. By the way, have you noticed, I've been a bit more generous with my time today? Recently, I've been squeezing in 10 minutes for the 20 minutes because it's been such a last-minute thing, trying to sleep and then cover, of course, the night's action. But perhaps because tonight is a night off, it's given me a chance to do a more extensive 20 minutes. By the way, make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. And if you like what you see and you want to get a comment on the screen and you want something to be addressed, or you just want to donate to the channel, feel free to hit that button. I think there's a $ sign on it. maybe it's translated to euros or whatever your currency happens to be, and you can give us a, what do you call it, super chat. I nearly called it a Snapchat, but it's called a super chat. You can click on that and donate anything you want, but we do accept $100 bills. Okay, let's have a quick look at some of the comments here from Ghosty getting in pretty early. I heard that Ghosty likes to do so. How has Korda progressed so rapidly? I saw him mention Radu Stepanek and Andre Agassi on his team. Wasn't aware of Agassi, I must say, Ghosty. That's news to me. Is that the biggest factor? Mentorship. I was truly stunned by the straight sets victory today. Well, first of all, truly stunned by the straight sets victory. Maybe. Listen, I think Jack is somebody who seems to be a bit of a Korda scholar. He's been slowly but carefully purring about Korda over the last few weeks, few months. He actually thinks Korda may well end up going on to having a better career than any other American on tour right now, including Taylor Fritz and Francis Tiafoe. Let's see if that comes to fruition, but he's starting to fulfill that potential. Maybe Ghosty meeting me last April, May, I think it was, we crossed paths. Maybe it was that inspired him to go on to the next level. It was just after, by the way, he'd lost to Rafa Nadal at Indian Wells, having had a double break in the third set there. So maybe that's what it was. We crossed paths. He wanted to have a selfie. I obliged because that's the kind of guy I am. And the next day I saw him again because it was in a small town in southern France. And he was returning from the supermarket with a couple of members of his team, ready to have a movie night in, I recall. And they had lots of bags of chips, as you call it in the US. Do you like how I translated crisps to chips? And lots of Coca-Cola. So maybe that's what it is all about. But seriously, I do think basically he's made little incremental progressions in every single part of his game. And we had these doubts about his mentality, and it was fine. Regarding the stunning straight set style of the victory, I also think there's something going on the other side of the net with Daniil Medvedev. Either he's lost his mojo, either he's lost some confidence over the last 12 months, or perhaps, is it too unfair to say a one or two dimensional game from Daniil Medvedev is starting to get found out, maybe even as a result of some of those defeats a year or so ago? And by the way, thank you for the super chat, Ghosty, once again. I've still got your loud and clear comment on the screen. Maybe I should put this point up that you just made on there. But thanks for your super chat. And if you are inspired by Ghosty, just like I am, feel free to donate or just simply ask a question. Nobody should be surprised at this point with Maria Sakkari. Indeed, Brian, it is becoming a bit of a pattern. I mean, the worrying pattern was when she was getting to semifinals and still not getting over the line, or the Indian Wells final and not getting over the line. But now the pattern is third round defeats, fourth round defeats. Tatiana Maria at Wimbledon, I think that was second round there, actually, albeit on a grass surface. Mukova, second round French Open. Today, third round to Zhu, number 87 in the world. She went out fairly early in New York as well. So it is becoming a pattern. She didn't reach the semifinals in Australia. And of course, it's, come the French Open, it'll be 2 years since that crushing semifinal defeat to Krejcikova. Okay. What other things we got going on here as well? Yes, Sakkari's getting a bit of a reputation. You'd argue Madison Keys too. I'm not quite so sure about that. Yeah, I agree. Zhu's tears were lovely. You called it, John. My bracket is totally exploded. Yes, indeed. That's how it is. Okay. Lewis there saying he can't wait to see Murray tomorrow. Iga and Goff are looking strong. I think Iga probably slightly more so than Goff, but that's understandable. And of course, I think they're on a collision course for a potential quarterfinal. But Iga, of course, will have to negotiate with Rebecca before that. Pegula, sure. It's really a bit of a lottery, really, between Pegula, Iga, Garcia, Sabalenka, and I would argue Krejcikova as well. Any one of those five could win this tournament, and I would not be surprised. Goff, I would say, is a little bit outside of that circle, but who knows? I've been wrong about tennis before, and I'll definitely be wrong in the future. Brian said he loved Cowan last night, and he saw that coming. Yeah, you did. You did have Cowan to win that. I had Tiafoe in my bracket, so I can't claim too much there. And Yeah, I felt sorry for Francis, but that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Good win for Rebecca in an otherwise terrible match. Yes, we watched that one together, didn't we, Ghosty? Uh, yeah, my nightclub's all bed at 10 Eastern time. Is that 10 a.m., Brian? Maybe that's 10 a.m. for Brian. He's so late coming back. Um, anyway, um, Lewis, they're saying it felt weirdly comfortable for a five-setter. Are you referring to Hatchinoff, perhaps? Sorry, are you referring to her catch there? I'm not quite sure. Oh, I see. Sinner. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, the Sinner one had echoes of, and I agree, Ghosty, it did feel more like a Fucsovics collapse. Listen, most commentators, by the way, they'll watch a match like that and they'll be asked, or experts, what do you think? Was it Sinner, great, or was it Fucsovics not great? And they always say a little bit of both, but there has to be slightly one more than the other. And I do agree that Sinner was good, but I'm erring slightly more towards the Fucsovics collapse on this occasion. And it did feel weirdly comfortable, Lewis. Funny enough, it felt a bit like Sinner's loss to Djokovic at Wimbledon, when it just never felt in doubt from the moment Djokovic broke at the beginning of the third set. Brian clearly is pleased that Sinner won, though. I think probably because he just feels as though he's justifying his potential a bit more. Gary there saying he got here a bit late, so I'll rewatch in a bit. Julien crashes a quarter that has all elite players in it. Juicy matches to come. Jethro there, yes, Sinner's winning the Australian Open. The win by Sinner was impressive, but yes, Fucsovics crashed and burned. Indeed. Tsitsipas versus Sinner's next going to be very exciting. Lewis, you might be right, but a year ago, Tsitsipas crushed him. And I think Tsitsipas is in slightly better shape this year. Remember that I think it was an elbow injury he had a year ago. And I'm not sure that Sinner is in such good shape. And I haven't really seen Sinner in excellent shape since the US Open, but we'll see. Okay. Moving on to some other things. McDonald handshake with Nishioka was a little bit cranky, not a big deal, but still. Yeah, I did hear about that. Not quite sure what that's about. Maybe it's because of the McDonald injury and some medical timeouts. No idea. Maybe Nishioka wasn't too respectful, but I can't comment because I'm not aware of what happened. Gary there confirming that the sound is good. Hi, Janie, as well. Nice to have you on board. Everybody, if you are still here, and I believe there are a few of you still here, make sure you hit that like button. And if you're in 2033, 10 years later, also hit that like button too. Sad to see Tiafoe go out. Yeah, he's one of my favorites to watch too. I agree. Cool. Gary, they're saying he didn't see the Hatchinoff match, but after seeing him take out Nick in New York, he's not surprised. Yeah, he's solid. He's solid. But I do think, again, the tiebreak for Francis. Pity. Okay. Gary, they're predicting a Hatchinoff win in the quarterfinal. You may well be right. Oh, sorry, in the fourth round. You may well be right with that one over Lehechka, I think, isn't it? Is it Lehechka? No, there's Felix is playing Lehechka. But anyway, you may well be right. Actually, who is Hatchinoff playing? I've already forgotten. It's only about 10 minutes since I last mentioned it. So Tsitsipas is playing Sinner. And Hatchinoff, oh yeah, Nishioka. Yeah, probably. Although I know a couple of guys at Talking Tennis who actually fancy Nishioka to do that. I think maybe Jack is one of them. I'm not sure. Okay, Gary, they're saying my scribbling works for him. And Janie, they're saying, gotta run. Take care, Janie, and enjoy that New York sunset. Okay, cool. Any other points here? Gary there, sorry, Ghosty here saying, how much of Sakkari's nerves are because of Schneider's competitiveness in the early round? I wouldn't say that's anything to do with it. I just think that it's been an issue for Sakkari for a while. I've knocked my bottle of water over, but you'll be pleased to know that the lid was on. Always have the lid on, kids. That's my advice. Yeah, I don't think that had anything to do with it. I know she was a bit annoyed with Schneider in the previous round. Listen, Sakkari's a competitor. I remember her slightly cold reaction to Trevisan at the United Cup after her defeat there, which maybe told us to keep an eye out for Sakkari here in terms of her form. I don't have a problem. You lose a tennis match, you're not particularly happy. Maybe you're a bit annoyed by some of the antics on the other side of the net. Sure, there might be a cold handshake and a grumpy press conference. and you move on. My only issue is if you're still dwelling on it 6 months later, because you got to get over it, which is really interesting, actually. I think it was a really interesting point that David Samuel made in one of our chats, the coach of Liam Brody. He said, listen, he said to one of his players once, how long does it take you to get over defeat? And the other guy would say weeks or even longer. And he said, listen, do you want to win tennis matches? Yeah, really badly. He said, well, you're wasting weeks of your season. You're wasting weeks of your year and perhaps even your career. So you need to get over it and get on with it and try and fix the problem. And you're not going to fix it by being down. Okay. Anyway, but no problem with a grumpy handshake. I'm fine with that. Who wants to win? Who wants to lose? I'm sure, Ghosty, when you play cards or whatever sport it is you're into, I'm sure you're not a good loser. Okay, thanks for the compliment as well. Nice descriptions. I have no idea, by the way, what that's referring to. I could have been describing anything, but I'm glad you like it, whatever it was. And like for the Murray match experience again, fun experience. And thank you, for that, Ghosty. Okay, the silky effect, Korda will never lose again. Well, let's see. By the way, Ghosty, listen, I get things wrong a lot of the time as well. You've just called me maybe on a hot streak, but that could easily change in the next 24 to 48 hours. Hi, Lexi. Yes, nice to have you on board as well. And for those of you tuning in, make sure you hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Ghibli here getting in. Djokovic worries me with his injury, but surely if he'd done his hamstring properly, he couldn't play at all. I guess there's a fear that tightness he feels could lead to a full tear at any moment. I don't know. I just don't know because I've heard he's not wearing it when he's practicing now. So I guess that's a good thing. And you'd think if it is that serious, he'd be wearing it. His movement seems pretty explosive when it needs to be. So that's fine. But there were a couple of moments in the previous round where after the explosive movement, which was fine, then there would be a hobble. However, in the final set, the only person hobbling was his opponent to a bagel. Just don't know. Don't know. And a tight hamstring, which is what it does seem to be, can be fine. A tight hamstring can clear up pretty quickly and can be fine. And you can have a tight hamstring for a while. Stretching obviously helps, and even a day or two's rest can help. But it's still vulnerable. And for sure, if this, probably what I'm saying is, if this was the Adelaide 250, I think he would have pulled out on the eve of this slam. But it's a Grand Slam, and off we go. And if anyone's going to test it, a certain Senor, I can call him Senor Holger Rune in the potential quarterfinal. Is it for? I think it's a potential quarterfinal for Djokovic. But of course, Rune will have to beat potentially Rublev before that. So he'll have a few questions to answer. Sakkari didn't seem that nervous. Zhu was just better. Maybe Ghibli, but I do think that her being better added to that. And there were a few tight shots from her. A few times she was hitting the net. A few times she seemed a bit tentative. Like I say, the double fault. Maybe as well as a commentator, we're all familiar with some of the yips that Sakkari has appeared to have. She also openly talks about how desperately she wants it. We also saw the Netflix documentary where she openly talked about the anxiety she has, the looks towards the box as well, not knowing quite what to do in these situations, just for me adds to the notion that she may be a little bit tense. But who knows? Do I think Murray can go 5 again tomorrow, says Lewis? No, I don't. I don't think he can go 5 again tomorrow, but I said the same about yesterday, and I was wrong there. I said the same more or less about the Berrettini match. Certainly when Berrettini gets back to 2 sets all, for me there was only one winner. See, Ghosty, I do get it wrong sometimes. Okay, you think Humbert could take Rune? I don't, Ghibli personally, but you never know. I would love to see a Senor Rune t-shirt with him in a black cowboy hat and holding 2 smoking pistols. I know you would, Ghosty, and I'm sure we all would too. I hope this episode of 20 minutes was a little bit more fulfilling than some of our previous ones where they've had to be short, sharp, and snappy. I really went for it in a lot more detail today, thankfully having a bit more time, because this time yesterday, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Andy Murray was still playing. So that explains why I had to, do a little bit of a short, sharp 10-minute one then. Thankfully today, I've had a bit more time to do these things. Whoa, what a tournament. I do think it has taken off, Ghosty, in the last 48 hours, very much so. But as you can tell from the tone of my voice, I am bringing today's episode to a close. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. And I will be speaking to you all again very, very soon. I think Novak, Andy, and Steph are probably the big fan draws left and right. Yeah, quite possibly Andy will be the big draw to some extent, but I don't see him going super far. But we'll see. Could be wrong. Peace as well, Ghosty. And I will leave you with the 2-minute video that we had to introduce the show with some of the highlights from the last 24 hours. And then I will see you all again very, very soon. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.